So anyway, and here it is, the recording. So anyway, there's a couple of different parts to how this works. First of all, a lot of people have been contacting me, and thank you, because I sped this presentation up because of you guys. You know who you are. And they want to know what listing documents. So I did a little cheat sheet on listing documents, and there might be some additional ones, but you know, there's documents. There's how do you do business in New York? What's different between New York and Connecticut? So if everybody could weigh in and let me know, like, what's top of mind, really? Anybody?
Closing dates.
Closing day. Oh, closing dates. Dan Leiden, that's a good one. So closing dates, as we know in Connecticut, closing dates are pretty much very close to the date that that we put on the purchase agreement and later on the contract. In New York, it's plus or minus 30 days. So one thing I would recommend if you are doing a New York closing to Connecticut purchase is to have an attorney that knows about both, because it could get pretty hairy coordinating those closing dates, since it's not 30 days on both sides. And even if the attorney is not admitted to the bar in Connecticut, that they would know, and a lot of them do know. So closing dates are really important. And I mean, I had something go way past 30 days because somebody was taking their money out. I was the listing agent, and the buyer was taking their money out of a business account and putting into their personal account, and the money had to be seasoned for, I don't know, 2 like statement cycles, and it was painful. So you know, things like that do happen, but in New York, you know, that's the deal, plus or minus 30 days. I'm gonna go over main differences. Okay, so the main differences, Linka. So some of the differences are disclosures. Disclosures are mostly not signed in New York. They still have the rule that you can do, they still have the rule that you have to credit the buyer $500. However, most attorneys do recommend that they do not sign the disclosures. So I've had people say to me, what happens? I just don't want to credit them. I'm like, speak to your attorney. And then it's on the attorney and they can do it. But for the most part, people do not, except for lead. People do sign the lead documents. I'm just kind of checking things off. Some communities like as in Greenwich, do not allow for sale signs, and they do not allow open house signs except for one on the property. So I usually call the police department. Like in Larchmont, you cannot put signs around. So just be careful, because, you know, depending on where you are, just find out about the signage. You know, it's kind of similar to like Darien, New Canaan, or for sale by broker. Like they have different rules. So I would definitely check that out. New York still does not allow cold calling due to the pandemic. So that's, you know, a big one. You could get into a lot of trouble if you're cold calling in New York. Let's see what else. I made a cheat sheet just to make sure we, okay, so one thing is, when you get your reciprocal license from Connecticut to New York, you need to get a letter of good standing from the MLS. And in addition to that, what I would do is call HGAR to find, you have to join HGAR or One Key. There's 2 different names now, and make sure that you're totally set up, because even though they use the smart, you know, the Supra box, you have to get set up on that Supra box. So make sure before you go out to an open house or showings or whatever, that you're set up. And, you know, there's different lock boxes for New York and Connecticut. So, and New York, let's see, what are some of the other, okay, so we go into binder here, and sometimes in some communities we go into contract. In New York, they do not Yes, Jody, continuing ed is reciprocal. However, I think they require more hours. I just kind of did it and I never submitted it. Don't tell, but, they just, wound up. I mean, I figured like if they need to check, they will. So, but anyway, in terms of what was I talking about? Blah, blah, blah. I forgot.
Binders and contract.
Binders and contracts, thank you. So there's no binders, they go directly into contract. Agents will give you offers by text, by email, verbally. So it's Jody shaking her head. So it's always a good idea to put in the agent only notes how you would like your offer to be submitted so that people have a guideline with which to follow. I mean, that doesn't mean they'll follow it, but you know, that's kind of that. Does anyone else want to weigh in? Like, I feel like I'm just doing this monologue, but does anyone else?
Yeah, Diane, sorry, this is Eric.
Hi, Eric.
Thanks for doing this for us.
No problem.
Would it be possible to go over like the process from, okay, there's an offer coming in what way it comes in? Or even we as a buying agent, where do we find all the documents? Like we use Command, they're not always available in Command, or I have a difficult time finding them. So if you could enlighten us on that.
Okay, so I have a little cheat sheet here. Can I share my screen, Rick? Is Rick still here? It says I can share, so let's do that. Let me just find that.
Diane, after the call, would you be able to share some of those things? That
Yeah, you know what? I might send it to Skylar and see if he can do it. So here, oh no, that's the other cheat sheet. Okay, here's the documents. So here are, I'm sorry. Did someone want to say something?
I was gonna piggyback off because you had said you felt like you were doing a monologue. For Eric, I know a lot of the documents are in our command and in the DocuSign, and Dana, I just asked this question. So I haven't done a ton of business in New York, but my experience has been that it's similar to kind of the Greenwich Darien, right? Where everything, if you're working with a buyer, it goes on a memo of agreement. Is that correct?
A memo, yeah. So
Okay.
we have these documents in DocuSign. And so I did New York listing documents, New York buyer documents, and where to find them. So the listing documents is the HCAR exclusive right to sell listing agreement. One of the differences on that listing agreement is they ask how much commission you are giving to the buyer side. So I only put buyer's broker. I don't put, there's two other categories. One is like, you know, I don't even remember quite honestly, but there's two other categories and I put 0 there. And I just put buyer's agent will get whatever percentage you're going out at. There's both a buyer agency disclosure and a selling agency disclosure. It's kind of like the one we have in Connecticut that covers everything, but you know, they talk about who you would designate it to if there is dual agency, and you could either put somebody or to be determined or whatever. The lead document, if it's, you know, before 1976 or 78, that is something you would need. You can do, they don't really do inclusion exclusion forms, but you can do it. You can do the Connecticut one just so that people know. So a lot of times these offers come in as emails. I usually, if I'm on the buyer side, put it in as a memorandum of sale. However, once the offer is accepted, it's filled out by the listing agent. That's why I kind of have it in both areas. Wire scam and any other forms required by KW 203. Property condition disclosure, I wrote, is not required, but have them speak to their attorney.
So is that, Diana, is that when you're saying for the memo, it then once the offer is accepted, the selling agent then fills out the memo,
The real one,
like
right?
like redoes that. So is that where the selling agent is responsible to disclose anything that like I know one of the biggest things that we keep having is like the septic. The town has a septic system as a 3-bedroom, let's say, but the town also has that it is a 4-bedroom house and
Right.
that there's no issues, but it's just like they just don't have their documents correct. You know what I mean?
It's a mess. And a lot of these
It's a mess.
in these municipalities, it's a mess, quite
Yeah.
honestly. And, you know,
But
there's
that
a
has
lot
to
of
get
due diligence.
disclosed, right? Right.
And honestly, I was working with a New York agent, and I was on the buy side, and I said to them, okay, there was a buried oil tank, where are the documents? And he's like, I don't know, like, go to the municipality. I'm like, you get them from your seller. And he's like, I didn't know I had to upload them. Like, it was almost, I felt like
Right.
he wasn't, sometimes they're not very well trained. I mean, that's the other thing. Sorry, New York agents, but like,
Well, and so I guess what I'm wondering is who's like, we had a situation and we didn't know, is it whose responsibility it was to disclose like what we were finding out in the due diligence period. You know what I mean?
right. Well, if it's as is, you know, you kind of have to do your own, but generally a seller, if it's a material fact anywhere, my feeling is that a seller would disclose that. But
And then the seller's agent writes that into the memo once they accept the offer, or does it have to be on the listing?
it all depends on what it is. And at that point, I would get the attorney involved and say, like, here's some of
Okay.
the conditions or whatever, because the
Yep.
memorandum of sale is still not signed. It's a
Right.
document that the agents submit to each of their attorneys. So
Okay. Thank you. I just wondered if we were, if we
No,
felt like we were
no.
the only ones in the confusing gray or what.
no, there's a lot of gray areas, and some, at the end of this presentation, some people will be like, forget it, you know.
Uh-huh.
Cover it
Uh-huh.
out or whatever. So, you know, I mean, like, that's up to you individually, but it is what I would kind of call a sheep show, you know, at times. So,
Uh-huh. Yep.
yeah, so that's one.
Diane, I have a quick question if I can. Thank you so much for doing this for us.
Yeah.
What is the
problem. Thank you, guys.
deal? What is the deal with the New York agents not changing the statuses on the HCR MLS? And in fact, including accepted offer or AO in their confidential agent remarks? It is incredibly frustrating to have to go through 60, 70 listings to try and figure out which ones have the offer and which ones don't.
They don't have a show status in their MLS. It basically goes from active to pending, and the pending means that the contract is signed. Unlike Greenwich, where there's like 2 categories, or in our MLS where there's 2 categories, that's why they put it in the agent's notes. Flood insurance, they put in the agent's notes. And even, you know, I'll talk about taxes also. So, you know, if you guys want to chime in, Doreen and Lloydie, you know, I'm not really managing this properly.
Diane.
Yes.
Hi, it's Doreen Kelly.
Hello, Doreen Kelly.
I'm going to be getting my New York license. I've had a Connecticut one for a while, but I'll also give you my experience as of recently, which will help a lot of people understand help from as trying to buy real estate in New York. And the situation is with the Wild West in New York is an understatement. They do not put, if you look at listings in New York, they don't even put square footage of the home on the listing. If you look at
why? You can't always get it from the municipality, and sometimes they won't give the agents the information, and you kind of have to figure it out on your own. It's the municipalities that sometimes do that. Sorry.
Well, I've also been told by a number of New York agents that there is mega lawsuit fear. They will not disclose anything because of fear of a lawsuit. So when you look at a listing in New York, most information is missing, including the size of the lot, the square footage for sure. And in this particular case, I was looking on Long Island, and in Connecticut here, cesspools have been essentially outlawed for decades. And most of Long Island in Suffolk County has cesspools. And there's no documentation on them. You're not allowed to inspect them. It's kind of like buying a pig in a poke.
It is the wild absolute west.
Right. I mean,
It is. Buried oil tank was my other thing. Well, do you have documentation? And Chelsea, I heard you say that before. I went through the exercise. I couldn't even find anyone that could give me any information about a buried oil tank. I mean, I went to a number of town halls, county halls, and of course you have another level of municipalities, because you have the town, then you have the township, then you have the county, and then you have the state. So it's, where do you go? Is it the town or is it the township that has those documentations? I finally found out, I don't know if it's even true, but I was told that if there's an oil tank that's in the ground and it's less than 1,100 gallons, and this was told to me that it was a New York state law, that there is no documentation needed.
oh,
I believe that
1,100
that
gallons.
is true, because I've been told in New York that, to have at it. If we want the oil tank out of the ground, call the company and remove it ourselves, because they weren't going to touch it. So, I would just caution, if you're going to start out in New York, it might not be a bad idea to partner with somebody who knows what they're doing,
right.
because it is so different. And I was reading, it's different because we're from Connecticut, but it just, it doesn't make rational sense either. So,
but I feel
that's
like
the other problem.
but I also feel like to the response of, right, it just feels so chaotic too, because we're from Connecticut. But I mean, I was working pretty closely with a few agents in the Armonk area, and really started and had been, honest with them that I was new, and asked for kind of, some guidance. And even most of them were like, oh, we know this is just chaos here. It doesn't, nothing here makes sense. I'm like,
Yeah.
Absolutely true.
I'm like,
That's all I heard.
wow, that's so helpful. Not like, what do we do with that?
Exactly.
So,
So,
Can I chime in?
Lloydie was next.
okay.
Yes, the only positive thing about having a license in New York is the price. It's much cheaper. It's $50 for 2 years. But that's about it. The rest is really chaotic. I think one of the reasons why the MLS is a chaos is because the municipalities are also chaotic. Everyone, does things differently, and it doesn't make sense. And they don't have, now they're driving me crazy with the status of the listings, because they have a temporarily off the market for everything from pending, showing. Actually pending is actually under contract, but for showing, or just because the seller decided to take a break, that is also temporarily off the market. So you have to go listing by listing to know which ones are actually showing.
Right.
It's a
Yeah.
mess. It's a mess.
Yeah, that was one of the other points, that it gets crazy with the temporarily off market, because if the seller has an accepted offer and they do not want to show it, they do have to use that designation and take it off the market. So, or temporarily off market. Did we lose Dee? I guess we did.
No, I'm here.
Okay.
I just have been doing this maybe not as long as Diane, but pretty long. And I just wanted to say, you just have to change your perspective. It's a mindset situation. Right, Diane?
Right.
And we tried to do one
Yeah,
together.
we did one
actually.
together. We tried, yes.
Yeah, we did
That
try. It was a good
yeah.
try. Anyway, I think you have to take a breath and just change your mindset about the way we do things in Connecticut versus when you walk into New York. It's just a different set of rules and you got to go by it. Just like when I have a New York agent trying to do a memorandum of offer here in Connecticut. And I try to say to them, it's not how we do business. You have to
Right.
you have to use one of our forms, and they
Mhm.
don't, and then they push back.
Right.
Same kind of thing. When you walk into New York, you play by their rules. So as long
Right.
as you're willing and able to do that, you play by their rules and you can be successful. So that's
Right.
my first point. My second point is, yes, it's a pain in the ass, but you can be very successful, and you just learn, you meet some, you get there, you have to weed through, the remarks, and you find out, and I'm finding that in the northern part of Westchester and into Putnam, they're doing things differently from my first septic, 8 years ago, when they actually did a sniff test. I'm not joking, a sniff test. Just take it at that.
That
They were
sounds,
walking around doing a sniff test, and I went, what? So now they actually do a true septic. So what can I tell you? It's evolving, and just keep on at it, and things are coming along, and there are areas in towns that do have records, and there are attorneys that are requiring, oil tanks to be removed. It's slowly happening, just like it did here in Connecticut. Things are changing.
right. And Creed had his hand raised at some point. Did we lose you, Creed? Maybe.
I can speak for him probably.
Yeah.
Okay, there you
What are you
go.
gonna ask?
There you go, Dan.
I can't get off this.
I don't know what he's gonna ask, but he's sitting right here. Oh, now you hear both of us.
Okay, well,
What are you
we'll
gonna ask?
be here for a while.
Diane, I have a quick question just regarding the, you said offers are accepted just via phone?
No, well, you would drive, if you're the listing agent, you would drive how you would want your offers accepted, because some people will call you and be like, here's the offer. And you're like, no, you have to put it down. I use the same standards that I use for Connecticut, that they have to put it on, maybe not an offer form, but a memorandum of sale, or even just an email outlining all the terms and the
Okay.
pre-approval, and if there's a lead disclosure. So, and Lloydie had her hand, and Herm was,
Yes, just a quick note. If you have a listing or any transaction in Yonkers, God help you.
I have one coming up. Haha.
God help you.
And I had one, I was ready to kill myself, but, who was next? There was somebody, Lenka?
Yes, so I'm trying to understand, when buyer agents are writing up the offers for their clients, what exactly do they do with regards to closing dates there? I mean, what do I put? I mean, especially if I have someone who needs to sell and buy.
Make sure, I would try to get an attorney that's admitted to both New York and Connecticut bars, so that they can kind of know what's going on. And you put a
Well,
proposed date, but
I'm trying to figure out, so if I put in November 30th is when my clients need to close by in New York, and most likely that's not going to happen. Does that even matter?
I wouldn't put November 30th. Like, I try to back it up. For example, and obviously it depends on the type of offer and when they're getting their financing. But if I know they have to close November 30th, I might put October 30th or October, sometime in October, so that there's a cushion. Because if you do November 30th, it could close December 30th.
I see. Thank you.
No problem. Were there any other questions, or I could go on to more info?
Diane, I think just so people really are clear when they're filling out the paperwork, there are, like you said already, there's 3 categories: the buyer agent, the broker agent, and the sub agent.
Oh, right. Those are the ones.
So
Thank
you
you.
have to make sure you're filling it out. I've always thought, if I made a mistake, am I going to have to pay a commission to somebody that I didn't mean to pay a commission to? So
Right.
just be careful on the paperwork, because that is actually the paperwork going into the MLS.
Right. So I put 00 for the the sub-agent and the broker agent, and whatever percentage for the buyer agent. And since we're on that, a lot of people in New York offer 2%. So, you know, it depends, like sometimes higher price listings, they do less. Although it is pretty standard, like Yonkers, when I do a listing, I kind of look and see what everybody else is offering, and then kind of go from there to see. But, you know, again, it does vary, but most of the time it's 2, or a lot of times. So rentals, 1 month security. That's why some people like to look in New York versus Connecticut. That's one of the differences. So try to know something about the communities that you're working in, because, for example, there's a huge difference in Scarsdale, PO, Yonkers, or Scarsdale, PO, New Rochelle, than Scarsdale proper. And the same thing with Bronxville and a lot of these communities. Like, I don't remember who was saying it, but like there's a lot of overlap on communities. So you have to make sure that you either know or ask somebody about certain communities, or go by a school district, which, you know, if that's important to the people. So, you know, that's interesting. There's no broker metrics for New York in our office currently. You know, I do absorption rate because that's a good indicator of what's going on. And, you know, you can do some of the like things that the fast stats and things like that that are in the MLS there. So some agents from the Bronx or from other areas, they're members of different MLSs, but they want to show the property. They don't always have access. Now, if you're in Connecticut and your listings in like Chappaqua or somewhere, you have to make sure that either someone can let them in, or, you know, do you have a colleague that can do it, or, you know, so just keep that in mind. You'll get calls and you're like, do you have access to the MLS or to the lockbox? And so I think HGAR, one key is trying to make it more universal for Long Island agents and for agents in the Bronx. There's a different, like Keisha is an agent in the Bronx, Keisha Kirkland, and it's a different MLS. I'm not sure which one it is. So that's something that is interesting. So if somebody calls and wants to see it, just know where it's coming from, that, you know, they might not have access. Our sign company goes to New York. That's good to know. But check about signage. There are many, many more co-ops in New York than there are in Connecticut. Co-ops are generally cheaper. The HOA is generally higher because taxes are included. And, you know, I mean, I've never done a co-op in New York because I kind of don't want to, but it doesn't mean that I won't. So, you know, I would list one in a heartbeat. In terms of buying, you know, a lot of them are not priced that highly. So again, it's individual, but there's a lot more co-ops. So just be clear with somebody if they want a co-op or a condo. Some rentals, and also I don't know if John Rios and Kenny Baskin are on, but they were saying, you know, I met them last week, and they were saying that some people, some buyers are paying the buyer's agent's commission or some of the commission. And even on rentals, sometimes landlords will ask people to either pay the commission, in other words, the renters, because that's a standard in New York City, but it hasn't been a standard in Westchester up until recently. And I wouldn't call it a standard, it just kind of happens. So look at the listings carefully to make sure that you know who is being asked to pay that commission. But if John and Kenny are on, if you could jump on and explain that, because I didn't get the whole story and I was like, oh, please explain that later on. But if not, I might reach out and get that information from them. But yeah, like people are doing kind of desperate things to get houses, and that's one of them. So, and you know, it's great for the seller because it's just another value add to them that they don't have to pay. So for larger properties, like if you guys are anything that's investment, 6+ units is considered ETPA. ETPA is a designation, and 6+ units have to be registered with, I don't know if it's the state or each, they have to be registered somewhere, and everybody has to have leases. They have to renew the lease every year, and they get a certain percentage of increase every year. And, they just have to know, like, there's certain standards where Connecticut does not have ETPA, I've asked. Okay, another interesting thing is taxes are generally higher in New York, but they have certain tax abatement programs like STAR. And when you call the municipality, they won't always tell you the taxes. You have to figure it out yourself, like they give you the formula and you figure it out. And then they will tell you how much would be STAR. Like there's different designations. There's STAR, there's Senior STAR, I think there's Homestead. And you can put in the agent notes. I know Herm is shaking his head. He's like, what the heck? I know, right? He's gonna call me afterwards.
Wow.
But, right, yeah, it's
Like
annoying.
wow.
But so what you do is you put the actual tax and say, this does not reflect the X amount in STAR in this that you would get credited. And these programs, there's a certain part of the year, you have one time a year that you sign up for them. And if you miss it, you have to wait till next year. So, and you like apply for it. So that's another thing that's interesting. Now, let's see. I really went through a lot of it. Oh, another thing is a lot of places in New York asked to see a pre-approval, especially during COVID. There were certain COVID docs that had to be signed. I think you don't have to do that anymore, but like pre-approvals are sometimes asked for, or proof of funds before you go. And that happens in Connecticut too. It just depends, but more so in New York. Let's see, what else? So I guess, does anyone have any questions after all that very intense information? Herm, yes.
Sorry, I missed a bunch of stuff, but when we were talking earlier about the municipalities not having any information, how is that possible? Aren't they supposed to have the field card and that's how they tax you, and that's amazing. They don't have the information. Who does?
Sometimes you have to go there or submit in writing, like they have all these different things. And sometimes I'll give the homeowner the information and not you. There's not all municipalities are online.
Oh, okay.
Connecticut,
All right.
we have a lot that are online now. Because of COVID, they might give you the information, but they're kind of cranky about it. Like in New Rochelle, I called up and they're like, you have to figure that out yourself. And I'm like, oh, come on, really? And they were like, yes. So,
Oof, what are we getting into? No,
exactly.
I'm just kidding.
Now,
I'm just kidding. No, I mean,
no,
we
you
just
know
gotta
what?
maneuver, right?
It's a personal choice.
We gotta
now,
navigate.
Cecilia Valentino was not able to be on. She's an expert in Queens. She's got a lot of information there because technically it's considered New York City. One thing she did say is that the commissions that they're offering sometimes are freakishly low. So, that might be something you may or may not want to get involved in. But again, like she would be the person to contact. So I guess, let's see, there were a couple of things that I wanted to go over. We can go back over the documents now. The buyer, another main difference, buyers do not have to sign a buyer's agreement. It is not the law in New York like it is in Connecticut. It's a good idea to get it signed if they'll sign it. If not, you make a judgment call. If I don't know the people, especially, I'll ask them to sign it. Like in Connecticut, everyone signs, but in New York, I make a judgment call. If they don't want to sign or sign for like one listing, then I'm not going to them out because, they could just go to their agent and be using you. You just don't know. The memorandum of sale, we kind of talked about, if you want to put your information, including terms, on an email, people will accept it. And there's a buyer agency disclosure. Between these 4 places in DocuSign, there's a New York Documents tab, there's KW 612, did I get that right? The NYSAR docs and the HCAR documents. So they're all in there, including a fillable memorandum of sale form. Although you can only check, I have to reach out to whoever made that form, but you, in the inspections, you can only check one. And so I just put it in notes later on. So, you know, and the deals go right to contract, no binder check. There's one other thing that I want to handle, like I want to talk about more as a, like a discussion, but is there anybody else that has anything to share or questions or whatever?
Diane, did you say
Diane.
there's no buyer's agency agreement in New York?
There is, but they don't have to sign it, and most people don't.
So how are you protected? I don't get it.
You're not. That's why. So, and I have had people who have signed it, and, you know, again, most of the people I work with, I know them, and, you know, they sign it. So yes, Dee.
I've not had a problem getting people to sign it. I think it goes back to the presentation and how you present, and I think you can get people to sign it. And
Yeah.
I would definitely just go forward the way you always do, and it will work.
I
And so
agree.
that's how I would go forward. I wouldn't ignore it. I wouldn't put it at a different level of
No,
importance. I would just present it like you would a buyer agency agreement in Connecticut, and
mhm,
pull it up and have them sign it and say, you know, and go forward. That's how I would do it.
Right.
That's my opinion. And I think you know, that's how I would move forward. And
Where do you
Jody has
find the
holding
form?
up her hand, by the way.
Jody?
Okay, so Di, one other thing that I don't think has come up, is there, have you heard there's something that when you have a listing, there's something that you have to check on the listing agreement that says that the buyer does not have to accept another agent presenting their offer in person?
Oh, yeah, there's a part that says like, who are
Who
you
has
to
the right to present
negotiate
an offer?
through? And I always check listing agent, but yes, thank you for bringing that up. But yeah, there, I mean, it's a different form, so, but yeah, that would be checked. And the other difference is that you're putting, not only, you put total commission, and then you put the commission that you're giving out to the buyer's agent.
I have one other thing too. They are changing I believe they did pass changing the lock boxes. So we're going to have 2 different systems.
Yes, I was gonna say the same
Totally
thing.
different. Yeah,
Well,
totally
it's-
different systems. They are changing it. So we're gonna have the blue boxes here and a totally different box.
Centra, they're switching to. And it was
Yeah.
supposed to already happen, but the
Yeah.
chips are back ordered or something, so it's not happened yet.
Yep, exactly. So beware, you're not gonna have the same app on your phone and go over into New York in the near future.
Right, because right
And
now.
different, and totally different boxes.
Mhm.
Okay, Di, just one question before you go, or before we finish up. Where did you, your little thing, your little cheat sheet above, where can we get that?
I'm gonna, I don't really know, but I can do that. And I also wrote a cheat sheet of all the things that we talked about that might be helpful for everybody. And I added a couple of things, so I'll update that. But maybe I'll send it to Skylar, and then anybody can ask him. I mean, I don't know what the procedure is, but
Diane, send it to me and I'll take care of it.
And I have to say, Diane, thank you for doing this, because I have to say, I always felt like I was in the Wild West and we're doing lots of things in Westchester.
good.
And I really came on this call really just to hear what you had to say, not because I felt like I had to add like I have so much to add to it. And it's nice to
Everybody has,
know that
yeah, there's
I
always
am in the
something.
Wild West. I'm not, it's good and bad. I am in the Wild West. It's not
Yes.
just me.
And then one thing I did want to talk about, and this is really a question to everybody, because there's a lot of agents who are showing properties in Connecticut, and then they might contact me or one of you guys and say, well, you have a New York license and my people want to check out New York too. Now, like if you're on a team like Dan has like Dan and Creator, or Jody, you're in both places, but a lot of people, and 99% of the time they will stay in Connecticut. And I guess, I always say to them, I have a conversation with people, talk to them about the taxes being higher, but I also sometimes send them listings and they see that they're not necessarily going to, get a better deal, or it's going to be cheaper there. So I guess I'm wondering, how do people handle that? Because I know one agent that does have a New York license asked to be part of the deal, and the people said no. And Dee, how do you do it?
Well, there are a couple of things that I had to do because there are certain laws, like accounting things that come up that people like, can't move from New York to Connecticut. There are reasons that come up. And so for
Right.
me, because I'm both, I could keep that buyer and then go back to New York with them. So it worked out.
Probably.
Right?
Yep.
Right.
So for me, it worked out. And so in previously in Ridgefield, in the market center, we on our list, you could call one of us and then refer to us. I don't know how moving forward we're going to do that as a KW 203, but
Right.
that's how, and then
Mhm.
refer, to go to New York. Yeah.
Right. And
There
another,
are reasons, there are accounting reasons why people from New York cannot or should not, and that's up to them to talk to their accountant, to talk to their
Right.
attorneys and find out, because I'm not going to give accounting reasons,
no.
like pensions, i.e. That's one
Right.
reason.
And I do tell people, like, there is no automobile tax in New York. So property taxes are higher, but you're not taxed on your vehicles and your luxury vehicles. There's certain other, and there's water charges, but I don't think there's sewer charges anywhere. That's another thing. If people sometimes get really granular about, if they're high seas, especially about like, where will I pay less taxes? So, that's something. Okay, anything else? No? Yes?
Diane, just a quick question to see
Sure.
if this is normal. What I experienced is that almost every house had to be opened by the agent. There was not one house that there was a lockbox on. I don't know if that's common or uncommon. Point number one. The other point is that I'm also told that the seller's agent is there for all building inspections. Is that also common?
No. It depends. I think like in Greenwich with the higher priced listings, and I guess it depends what you negotiate with your agent when you're listing. I've had listings, I don't show up there. Sometimes I do. But in terms of everything, I think it depends. It's kind of like Greenwich in that respect, if you've sold in Greenwich.
Mhm.
And the inspections for my New York listings, I really feel that that's like their time to be in the house with their inspector. So no, but a lot of communities do things differently, so.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Hey, Diane, if it's all right, I just want to kind of make a comment. I put this in the chat earlier, but I'd like to say it out
I haven't
loud.
even looked at it.
And that is this, that this conversation has been awesome, and it's been great to kind of hear some of the pros and the cons and the differences and the whatnot. But what I would encourage everyone to do is remember that it's just different, right? And different doesn't have to be have to be better or worse. Different doesn't have to be, you know, a subjective comment about right or wrong. It can just be different. And to agents who work every day in New York, it's not different at all. Like they come here and they're like, oh my goodness, they're such hard asses about how they do business in, you know, snooty Connecticut, right? So it's the exact same thing. Just remember that, like when in Rome, you have to just kind of speak Italian. And so the idea of understanding that it's just different, not better, worse, not right or wrong, not dated or whatever, right? I think will help you because it removes a lot of the drama and the emotion out of the process, right? Think about this from a process perspective. How is the process simply different? And then if you choose to do business across the border, then just know that you'll have to do that process, even though it's different than the way you might do the process in Connecticut. Right? I just got my broker's license in Massachusetts. And so now I'm learning all this Massachusetts stuff, and that's different all over again. It's different than New York, and it's different than Connecticut. It's similar in many ways, but it's also different, right? And at the same time, it's still real estate, right? So bring your expertise in what you do and how you do it to the table, but bring a level of flexibility to the table as well, so that you can just, you know, be a tree. Like the wind's going to blow, bend a little bit. Right? Don't be so rigid in this is how we do things. What I find in working with real estate agents for the last 2 decades is that oftentimes so many of us want things to be one way and one way forever. And I don't know if you've noticed, but that's not the way the world works, like in anything. So don't get so rigid about this is how we do things and then not be able to be flexible when things are done differently. And I'm not just talking about New York. I'm talking about in your own state, because things are changing rapidly and you have to be a little bit more flexible in terms of how people and the industry is doing business. So my big takeaway from this was a lot of us feel a certain way about how different New York is. I would encourage you to feel less and just objectively learn what the differences are, and then just go process business. Don't make it about how it feels, because it's not really relevant, and it'll just keep you spinning in circles.
Perfect.
If that's helpful.
That's great. Chelsea?
Thanks, Rick. That's great. Rick, I wonder if there's maybe we could get a list of contacts of the agents within our marketplaces that do business in New York, and then maybe we can do like a consortium type thing that kind of does like a Zoom call like this or something like once a month, where we can all kind of just share these different experiences that we have, so just we can keep gathering knowledge.
Yeah, sure. If somebody wants to kind of start that up and go for it, I'm happy to provide the list. It is not a short list anymore.
No.
There's probably upwards of 100 people who have Connecticut and New York licenses now. It used to be a very short list of people, and that list has grown to quite a lot of people at this point. So I'm happy to get you that list.
Maybe that's a good thing, because then we'll learn about all the different parts.
Yeah, no, indeed. And the other thing that we can do is we can do like a kind of a New York panel, like an Ask Anything panel as a follow-up to what we've done today, right? Diane kind of primed the pump and gave you all this information to kind of start digesting. And as each of you then goes back and either does your first transaction or recalls a transaction that you've already done, you may have a couple of more questions. And so we can put then together a panel of 5 or 6 people who have those answers, people who do that business in New York, like Diane, like Dee, like Christine, like Lori, right? I'm not sure if John or Kenny ever made it, Diane, but
I'm not sure,
we have people who do business in New York every single day, right? And by the way, those people who do business in New York every single day, like I said before, it's not weird and different for them. It's just Thursday, right, for them. So just remember, the more you do it, it just becomes Thursday. You just have to do it some more. But we can set up like a panel, like a Q&A panel, if that would be a helpful follow-up to this.
I was going to also add what might be helpful is some resources there, like the attorneys that that we find easy to work with or that are in Connecticut and New York. I have one or two in particular that I find easy to work with. And also septic companies, or I had a great oil tank company, removal company there during COVID that I praise, things like that. So, that might be helpful to the group.
Yeah, that's great.
Love it, love it. Somebody asked where they go to get their reciprocal license. I'm going to tell you that generally speaking, either Adonis or Deb Linke handles that. Adonis is on his honeymoon, so you can reach out to him on October the 4th. He'll kind of put you in the lane of go here. These are the forms, because he does that with people all the time. So give him time to get back, and he'll be happy to help you through that. I'm not sure who that was in the chat, but if that's helpful. Anybody else? Hey, Christine Trudeau, I see that you jumped back on. Thank you for being here. I have a quick question for you, if that's all right.
Absolutely.
If you had to point out the top 3 things that are different for real estate agents writing business in New York, what would those top 3 things be?
Okay, so number 1 would be always and forever more activity in New York than Connecticut. Except for that 3-month period where New York was completely shut down. I would say Connecticut is very much a checklist for realtors in terms of what they should do. New York is a little bit more fluid, and therefore there's a lot more partnership with the attorneys, because a lot of what happens in New York is considered more legal decisioning than real estate agent decisioning. And number 3, New Yorkers are just fun.
We are.
So what are you saying about Connecticut residents, of which you are one, by the way?
Yes, I know that. No, I really don't have a third. So I was just trying to do something funny.
Got it. Yeah, I think especially point number 2 is really important a really important note, right? Is that Connecticut's more of a checklist state. New York is more of a how are we holding each other's hand and kind of walking down the path together with the attorneys and with the with the clients. It's more of a partnership state. That's an interesting way to look at it. I had never thought about it that way. I like that.
Perfectly said.
Yeah.
Yeah,
indeed.
no, so you really have to like the attorneys you're working with. And when I jumped on, Dee was mentioning something about, getting people a list of really people that we work with that are really good. And that is really super important.
Totally agree. Yep. Go, Christine. Yes.
All right. So Christine, if we put together a follow-up to this, that's like a Q&A panel, would you come back and sit on that panel and kind of be able to answer specifics from your colleagues?
Of course.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Sorry, today was just a little rough. I had a junk removal change times for 1 o'clock.
Yeah, no worries. Well, Diane and I work on putting something on the calendar as a follow-up and give everybody enough time that they can kind of adjust some calendar. That would be awesome.
And this is recorded for anyone that missed it. So, you can always pull it up, or if you want to take a look at it again. I will make sure that I get some of these cheat sheets to Skylar so that, it's not organized in any really great fashion, but at least you kind of have the information. So.
Yeah, and that was me who said that before, Dan. Get them to me and I'll take care of it.
Oh, okay. I'll share them with you through Google Docs.
Yeah, sounds perfect.
Okay.
And so I'm going to leave the last word of our conversation today to Dorothy Darlington, who just put in the chat something that I think just sums up everybody's feelings, right? Thank you so much. This was great. I always thought I was dumb. And here's the good news, right? No, nobody's dumb about New York. It's just different, right? And it's different enough that it makes you feel a little like ooky. So the good news is with more of this I think kind of gets us started on larger conversations about process and differences, and then some real good best practices. So we'll schedule a follow-up in the next couple of weeks to this so that you can come back and ask your specific questions now that you've heard about some of the things that may or may not be different. Diane, thank you so much. Thank you to everybody else who participated today. We so appreciate your input and your questions, and we'll keep plugging away and get you as smart in New York as many of you are in Connecticut. It'll just take a little time because we've got some differences to work through. Have a great afternoon, everybody. And Diane, thanks again
Thank
for
you,
this.
everybody, for signing in. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Rick, for facilitating this. So this has been great. And my colleagues that sell in New York, thank you for helping me. Bye. Okay, how do I get rid of this?